Everybody, what's going on? I am Greg Sussman, joined today by Jim Salas of FanDuel, who's here to help me break down week number 12 and give us some of the undervalued players he's looking at in DFS. What's happening, Jim?
It's all good, Greg. This is a pretty tough slate as far as finding good value. So it's tough, especially at wide receiver. We could see some things open up later in the week, but as of Thursday, it's kind of tough in these streets. So I'm struggling a bit here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. What's not to love, right? We got DFS to help us win money for all the money that we lost in season long. So I feel good, and you're going to help me win that money. And we're going to start at the quarterback position, where maybe it wasn't easy to find some value, except at this spot, where Derek Carr against the Jets at $7,400, clearly a value worth taking.
Yeah, Carr has been a good quarterback, like a real world quarterback all year long. His efficiency metrics are awesome across the board. And it's been, it's a larger and larger sample, and Derek Carr has played really well. The one gripe you would have with him from a DFS perspective is that he hasn't really had a ceiling yet. And I think that's a good justification for going Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold in the same salary tier. We talked about both those guys yesterday. And I think that there is a path to Derek Carr having a ceiling in this game, specifically because the Jets' rush defense, even with Leonard Williams being gone, has been really good. What that will do is force the Raiders to be a little bit less run heavy than they have been so far this year. That gives additional volume to Derek Carr, could lead to additional touchdowns, and that's how you get a path to a ceiling game. Derek Carr hasn't had more than 21 FanDuel points the entire year, so the ceiling has been bad, but the floor has been very good. And if we can talk ourselves into there being a path to upside here, I think that it's going to be in a game like this, where they're facing a good rush defense and a bad pass defense. The Jets are ranked 25th against the pass based on number fires metrics. That is a great thing for Derek Carr. So I think, again, if you want to really shoot for the upside, I think that both Mayfield and Darnold are probably better plays strictly from that perspective, but Carr's floor is very good, and I think there is a path to a good ceiling here as well. So we haven't seen it yet this yeyear, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see that ceiling come out on Sunday against this really bad Jets defense.
I agree. Derek Carr has been a streaming quarterback of mine in season-long fantasy and in DFS. If you're not going with some of the stacks we talked about on yesterday's show, Derek Carr, a fine alternative, especially in tournaments. Let's move on, Jim, get to the running back position, where it is a bit tougher for sure. You begin in Buffalo, where Devin Singletary's had a nice little stretch after coming back from his own injury. He's priced at $6,300 this week on FanDuel. Why do you like Singletary in what should be a relatively tough matchup?
Yeah, the points haven't been there for Singletary recently, but the usage has been. I think that that's really encouraging. With Buffalo being at home is a pretty decent favorite. I think that they're being favored by that much is understandable, given that Brandon Allen is expected to start at quarterback for the Broncos. So I can see a path here where the Bills are out in front and they can run the football. We saw that last week, and Devin Singletary played 74% of the snaps. That has been his highest rate this entire year, and that number would have been higher had he not lost 2 fumbles, because he did lose snaps late in that game after that second fumble. I think that if we can get him to hang on to the ball this time, we should see that snap rate, be around 75% again. That'd be very good. Over the past 3 games, Singletary is averaging 14.3 carries and 3.7 targets per game. And no, he's not going to get all the goal line work. Josh Allen will get some, Frank Gore will get some, but he does have 2 of 8 goal line carries inside the 5-yard line over the past 3 weeks. So Singletary's role has changed, but his salary has stayed, actually it's gone down. It's now $6,300. It was 67 and then 65. So we're seeing the salary come down, and I think that salary is low enough to account for the inefficiencies in his profile, specifically losing that goal line work to Frank Gore. We know he is electric. We know he can bust off a long run or a long reception. I think at 63, he makes sense. I would be keeping an eye on other running backs here to see if other value opens up at this position. But Singletary, we know, will play about 70% of the snaps at home as a favorite. And I think that given his workload being a combo of both rushes and targets, that's a pretty attractive profile for me.
It is attractive, and again, it's kind of off the radar. And I know this is what the segment's about. Devin Singletary price is $6,300. I don't know how many people, at least the casual players, are in on what Devin Singletary has been doing as of late. To get him here against the Broncos, like I said, not a matchup you'd immediately point your finger at, but certainly something to consider on Sunday. Another running back that's worth taking a shot on is Myles Sanders against the Seahawks. He's priced at $5,600, which I think is a great price, especially not knowing necessarily the status of Jordan Howard. Myles Sanders could be the guy on Sunday, which certainly is worth taking a stab at this price at under $6K.
Yeah, Jordan Howard still has not been cleared for contact, so we don't really know what his status is going to be. If Jordan Howard does play, you're probably not going to want to use Myles Sanders because they would go to the committee there. But if Sanders gets to be, the top guy in this backfield again, I think that he showed on Sunday, even though he didn't really come through, he showed that he can be a really good play for DFS. His snap rate was around 85% in that game, and he did a lot as a receiver. He ran 42 routes in week 11, according to Pro Football Focus. 6 of those routes came from the slot. 7 of those were out wide, and that leads to really good usage in the passing game. We didn't really see that again. We didn't see that in the game against the Patriots, but it was kind of a weird game. There was heavy wind. The Eagles are super banged up. Now they may get Alshon Jeffrey back, and I think that bodes well. It is worth noting that Lane Johnson, their stud right tackle, looks like he's trending towards not playing, but they've had Andre Dillard, their first round pick, working at right tackle in practice, which means I think things should be better there than they've been in the past when Lane Johnson has missed tons. I think that's a good patchwork there for this Eagles team. It makes me feel better about Myles Sanders. I want running backs who get work in the passing game. Sanders should get that. And if he's going to play, 80% of the snaps again, he has big upside too. So for $5,600, I think he makes a lot of sense. Just got to keep an eye on that injury report because if Howard does go, Sanders loses pretty much all of his appeal. But if we get him as the top dog once again, I think there's a lot to like here at $5,600.
Yep, $5,600 without Jordan Howard. A lot of appeal in this matchup against Seattle. I really like what Sanders can bring, and he's a game breaker both in the running game and the passing game. You always don't look at just carries. You look at targets. You look at everything when it comes to the running backs, and I believe that Myles Sanders has the ability to do a little bit of all of it, especially at $5,600. You mentioned at the top, the wide receiver market was tough to identify an undervalued player in it this week, and we begin here with DJ Moore, one of your favorites and mine. He's in New Orleans with the Carolina Panthers, and he's priced at $6,400. Not super cheap by any means. And Kyle Allen was awful last week. Why do you like DJ Moore?
Yeah, even with Kyle Allen struggling, we've still seen DJ Moore paying off this salary even without touchdowns. His past 3 games, he has exceeded 2x value at his current salary of $6,400. He hasn't scored in any of those games. That's because he is getting monster volume. Over the past 5 games, DJ Moore has 30% of the Carolina Panthers targets, meaning that he has at least 9 in each game. He has exactly 3 deep targets in all 5 of those games as well, which gives him big yardage upside. Now, the Saints may not have Marshawn Lattimore. He was not able to practice on Wednesday. If you take him out of the equation, this Saints secondary did play well last week, but we're not expecting efficiency out of the Panthers. We want volume, and we're going to get that out of DJ Moore at $6,400. So you're right. He is not super cheap at $6,400, but I still think we can classify him as being a value because his role is so much better than what this salary would indicate. So I think that he makes a ton of sense. There aren't a lot of $5,000 receivers I like this week, so I am okay maybe spending down a little bit more at running back in order to get into the 6,000 range at wide receiver because there are some really good names here. I think chiefly among them, though, is DJ Moore. Massive volume, pretty decent spot against the Saints as well, and it's going to be really hard for me not to go to him at this number.
I totally agree. No Marshawn Lattimore, the key here for New Orleans against Carolina. DJ Moore in a blow-up spot potentially as long as Kyle Allen can get him the ball. And hopefully he finds the end zone. I know we've been waiting for that positive touchdown regression for DJ Moore all season long. Hopefully it hits here in New Orleans. One more wide receiver to get to, and that's Devante Parker, your guy in Cleveland to take on the Browns. He's priced at $6,000, and there's been a real connection here between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Devante Parker. When we least expected it, Jim, it happened. The Devante Parker breakout is real.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun to watch Devante Parker finally have a really good year because he was super talented in college, but just kept dealing with injuries. And this year he's finally been healthy, and we've seen that talent finally shine through. And I think that he's in a pretty good spot this weekend, too, with the Browns being super banged up. There's no Myles Garrett. There is no Larry Ogunjobi. There is no Morgan Burnett. There is likely no Olivier Vernon. He missed practice again on Wednesday, which means the Browns will not have the guys who have gotten 20 of their 30 sacks so far this year, most likely. That is a big number, and I think it allows the Dolphins to move the football here. And when they've been doing so recently, it has been via Devante Parker. In the 2 games without Preston Williams, Parker has 10 targets in both those games. He has 4 total deep targets in those games, and Ryan Fitzpatrick not the best quarterback, but he can connect on deep passes, which has given Devante Parker upside. He went for a buck 30 last week, despite facing Tre'Davious White. Now he's facing a Browns team that does have really good and really fast cornerbacks, but they're depleted overall on the defensive side of the football, and he's just $6,000. We've actually seen Devante Parker get at least 50 receiving yards in all but 2 games this year. He has had a really good floor, and I think that all the injuries and suspensions for the Browns give him a good ceiling as well. I want to use Baker Mayfield and pair him up with Odell Beckham, but if I want to do that, I want to run it back with one of the Dolphins here and hope this game is a bit high scoring. And I think that when I'm doing so, Devante Parker is easily the most logical route.
Absolutely. It's a no-brainer here with Devante Parker, and it has been fun to watch seeing him come into his own. If you just get away from Miami, you wonder how he could blossom into, but we've seen it now the second half of the year. Devante Parker, he's cheap and well worth taking at the wide receiver's position this week. Finally, we move on to the tight end, and this week, your dart throw is Dallas Goedert with the Philadelphia Eagles. Scored a touchdown last week. Same game, of course, as Myles Sanders. And Seattle has, not been great against a tight end here. He's $5,200. I know more people will probably gravitate towards Zach Ertz. What do you think about Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, Zach Ertz is a good play too. He is $6,100. I think that is too cheap. So if you can get to Zach Ertz, I would recommend you do so. His volume has been awesome, but the volume has been good for Dallas Goedert too. He has a 17% target market share over the past 5 games. And if you do exclude that one game where they played without Alshon Jeffrey, it's still 17%. That is a really good number for a tight end who is down in the low $5,000. He has had plenty of red zone chances in that time as well. And Seattle's defense is trending up, but there's still not a shutdown unit we need to fear. And you look at this Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver corps, not only is Alshon still banged up, but Nelson Aguilar missed practice on Wednesday as well due to a knee injury, which it looked like he sustained on that attempted touchdown catch late in that game against the Patriots. So we could have, again, steady volume available in this Eagles offense. That bodes well for Dallas Goedert, who is $5,200. I also really like Greg Olsen. He is $5,100. I think that, again, we have concerns around Kyle Allen, and those are justified. But Olsen's been getting a lot of volume at $5,100 where he makes sense. Ryan Griffin is 56. I could go there. Mike Gesicki is in the low 5,000s. He's gotten good volume. But Dallas Goedert has a good quarterback in Carson Wentz, who has struggled so far this year, but he's been good when targeting Dallas Goedert. And I think that we can go to Goedert once again. If you have the salary, I do like Ertz a lot, so I want to try to get there in cash games. But for tournaments, I am very okay dropping down to Dallas Goedert and plugging him in at this low salary.
Yeah, Goddard works out great. Greg Olsen, a fine choice as well. These prices are good at the tight end position. Before we go, though, I want to throw one more name out there. Well, my man, Big Ben Watson with Mohamed Sanu and Philip Dorsett banged up. Brady's got to throw to somebody.
Yeah, I could see it. I'm kind of hoping he throws to N'Keal Harry because N'Keal Harry is $5,000, and that'd be a great value wide receiver to have. Ben Watson, though, has played 70% of the snaps, and I believe now 3 or 4 straight games. Did drop a bit last week with Matt LaCosse being back, and that's a slight concern for me. But Watson's in a very fast game. It's the first and third ranked teams in situation neutral pace per Football Outsider, so I don't hate it for sure. I think that he's very interesting. But there are a pretty good number of low salary tight ends, but I'm keeping a close eye on N'Keal Harry with Philip Dorsett and Mohamed Sanu both banged up.
This is why Jim's the best. He had no idea I was going to ask him any question about Ben Watson with the Patriots, and he just rattled off 74 stats in 30 seconds about N'Keal Harry and Ben Watson. This is why he's the best, man. For real. That's going to do it for us here at the FanDuel. Hurry up for Jim Sonis. I'm Greg Sussman. Gabe Morency joins me tomorrow as he gives us the 6 best bets for week number 12. Have a great night. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you tomorrow.